Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy embarks on mass technology awareness. Merchants defy CBN directive to halt 50 naira stamp duty POS charges on customers, and deposit money banks conform to 2020 guidelines by the Central Bank of Nigeria. Plus, airstrikes in Iran that killed a military general sends markets skyrocketing. You are watching Business Express, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria. I am Amina Nujaim. Always a pleasure to have you join us. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, late December adopted the EC as the symbol of the ECO, its planned single currency. Leah Katung-Babatunde in this report highlights the recent events around the ECO.
The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, in the last 30 years has been struggling to establish a regional currency that will promote trade and development. 20 years ago, ECOWAS leaders agreed a plan to create a single regional currency to be named the ECO. This plan is that the English-speaking countries of Nigeria, Ghana, the Gambia, Sierra Leone and Liberia, along with Guinea, would form a currency which would later merge with the franc zone. 1 year later, precisely in 2001, the West African Monetary Institute, WAMI, was created to coordinate the efforts towards monetary integration of the English-speaking countries. ECOWAS insists it is aiming to have the ECO in place in 2020, but almost none of the 15 countries in the group currently meets criteria to join. A deficit of less than 3% of gross domestic product, inflation of 10% or under, and debts worth less than 70% of GDP are some of those key demands. However, 8 French-speaking members late December announced their decision to change the name of their common currency to ECO and sever the CFA franc's links to France on a day ECOWAS was meeting for a final adoption of the ECO. Ghana subsequently chose to align with them, while Nigeria says it is still observing. Opinions have been divided as to Nigeria's stand on the decision of French-speaking ECOWAS members to adopt the ECO ahead of the agreed takeoff date, as well as severe monetary ties with France that has been holding 50% of reserves belonging to the nations.
I am now being joined by Simon Samson Galadima. He is an economic analyst to take a look at the adoption of the ECO to replace the CFA franc by 6 French-speaking countries in the ECOWAS sub-region. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Okay, let's start the conversation this way. What's your take on the development and its implication to the monetary and physical space in West Africa? Now talking about the ECO.
All right, the ECO has been in the pipeline for a while. They have been wanting to implement it for more than 2 decades now. Unfortunately, it didn't come to pass the way it had been planned. The French, with their man in Ivory Coast, Alassane Ouattara, decided to just take us by surprise and said they would implement the ECO by the middle of this year. I think it's going to have a lot of implications. For fiscal policy, I think it will encourage a lot of discipline, a lot of fiscal discipline. For monetary policy, I think it will ensure some integrity in monetary policy, little interference from individual countries, because it's now a communal thing. Unfortunately, the Anglophone countries have been sidelined, they have been isolated. Though Ghana is thinking of joining, but for Nigeria, I think it's going to take a while before we eventually join. We tend to have this penchant for coming late to the party.
There are some experts who say that the French-speaking countries should have their own kind of arrangement, then the English-speaking should have an arrangement before coming together. Is that right?
Yes, that has been the plan. It was the French-speaking countries have the West African Economic and Monetary Union, the WEMU. Then the Anglophone countries, the English-speaking countries, including Guinea-Conakry, are supposed to have West African Monetary Zone. And they were supposed to form their own union first, then the CFA franc region with their own union, then the two will eventually come together. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case with this new development.
Okay, you earlier spoke about the French members and the actions they were taking. Is it not kind of confusing that just as the ECOWAS heads of authority plan to launch the single currency, the French do this?
Yes, I think France has some interests, and that's what they are trying to see this ECO implemented way ahead of time, ahead of other countries, the English-speaking countries.
Yes.
So there's this the French-speaking people of West Africa, the Francophone member countries. Some of their citizens are not happy with the French. They feel like the FA franc is a colonial relic, and it shows that their countries are not fully independent, and they have been clamoring for it to be discarded. So the French saw it as an opportunity, because there's this anti-French sentiment for a while. So particularly when it comes to the CFA franc, because you have to commit like 50% of your reserves with the French Treasury. The French government had representatives on the monetary authorities, the CFA franc monetary authorities, and so on and so forth. So people are not too happy about it, and the French saw the ECO as an opportunity for them to upload this burden that they have, this thing that is attracting a lot of negative sentiments for them.
Okay. Now, in all of these intrigues going on within the French-speaking countries and the English-speaking countries, where would you say Nigeria is, and what would be your view? Would you see it as sort of like a political alignment for economics?
Yes, it is. They actually tried. They upstaged us. We are supposed to be the bellwether for West Africa. Our GDP is more than 2/3 of the total GDP in West Africa, and our population is roughly 50%. So we are supposed to be the leader. We are supposed to have something analogous to what the Germans and the French have in the Eurozone. Unfortunately, with this new development, we are being sidelined, and even if we eventually join, we are not likely going to be in full control the way we are supposed to be if this thing had actually gone our way, with the Nigerian economy fully participating with the implementation.
Okay, looking at the size of Nigeria's economy, about 60% of the region, would that be a threat?
Yes, it's meant to isolate us. It's meant to weaken us. It's meant to make us see that we actually have a competitor, particularly in the French government. It's meant to subdue us. But I think we shouldn't panic. We should do our best. We should make sure that the economy is on a sound footing, and we can compete favorably with whoever is coming into the West African sub-region to do business.
Okay, we'll take a step back looking at the criteria for the
Yeah.
aspirations of the ECO,
Yes.
budget deficit below 3% of GDP,
Mm.
public debts no more than 70% of GDP, inflation more or less 10% or less,
Yes.
then stable foreign exchange, then central bank's financing deposit and deficit should not exceed 10% of the year's tax revenue of the previous year. Now, some of these criteria are a bit difficult, and 5 of the countries have met in terms of inflation. And to think that this is just the first step, what's your thought on all of these intrigues?
Yes, you know, the convergence criteria are actually meant to bring us together so that when we come together having a single currency, there will not be asymmetric shocks, there will not be distortions within the region, within the sub-region, the West African sub-region. And it may surprise you, like when Obasanjo was president, we actually achieved all the criteria, all the convergence criteria, 2006, 2007. Unfortunately, at the moment, we hardly can achieve all of them, the primary convergence, because the convergence criteria are divided into two, the primary convergence criteria and then the secondary. The primary are the ones that are meant to be achieved before the union, before the coming together of the 15 countries to implement the ECO. So I think at the moment only Togo has achieved that, and for us I think it's unlikely going to be achieved soon because our inflation is really high. Our inflation is really high, and our debt to GDP ratio is low, is below the 3%, but other criteria will take a while for us to achieve.
Wouldn't you say Nigeria would be at a disadvantaged point with what you're saying?
Yes, because there are advantages. If we come together to form the ECO, transaction costs will be reduced, and then it will encourage free flow of labor, capital, and prices and wages will likely be flexible, so it will encourage competition. It will actually boost the economy, to bolster growth. Unfortunately, if we don't participate, we are going to miss out on all these things.
Okay, something comes to mind. Do you see this affecting the budgetary process of member nations, and of course to peg currencies in the region when, for instance, Nigeria's crude oil sells in dollars?
Yes, that's why I think Nigeria is arguably the most vulnerable to external shocks. Like, we are so dependent on oil, and that seriously affects our foreign exchange. That's the rate at which you exchange the naira to the dollar, and it also affects our reserves. When the prices of oil on the international market are high, we accumulate a lot of money in the reserves. When they are down, we struggle to have such in our reserves. And one of the convergence criteria says that you are meant to have reserves that can cover 3 months of imports. So we are so dependent on oil, and it's like the backbone. Without that, we are highly vulnerable.
With the political willpower, do you see Nigeria working on meeting this convergence?
I think the political will, unfortunately, is not, in my opinion, is not there. I feel we have not been that determined to achieve the convergence criteria. It happened in 2006 and 2007 because there was this political will. But I think for now we want to be...
But what can Nigeria do at the moment?
Well, I think some of the convergence criteria are actually good for an economy, with or without coming together to implement a single currency of the ECO. Is going to help with our revenue to GDP. We have one of the lowest revenue to GDP ratios in the world, and one of the convergence criteria says that you should have at least 20%. And then our wage bill should not exceed 30% of our revenue. I think this will actually instill some fiscal discipline into the Nigerian economy.
Now, with some of these challenges which you have highlighted, should Nigeria follow the path of Ghana and take her time?
I think Nigeria should not just follow a particular nation, or it should not just do things because others are doing. They should decide on their own based on the merits of the situation and then join at the appropriate time that they feel ready to join. They should not allow anybody to stampede them into joining. Though I think if we can be the leader, it will be better.
Assuming President Muhammadu Buhari was listening to you right now,
Yes.
what would you advise him to do?
Mr. President, I think some of these convergence criteria are good for the Nigerian economy, not necessarily because we want to join the ECO, and we should put in all the efforts needed so that we can achieve them. Nigeria is the leader in West Africa. We should always lead in everything we do. We should not be the follower, no matter what, as much as possible.
Thank you for your insights, Simon Samson Galadima, an economic analyst. Thank you for taking time to join us today on Business Express.
Thank you.
And the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, recently reviewed charges, fees, and also issued new guidelines for banking services in Nigeria. Oduketem in Oyo reports that citizens are hopeful that this will drive a financial inclusion by providing efficient transactions options and a greater reach.
In furtherance of Central Bank of Nigeria's quest to make financial services more accessible and affordable to various stakeholders, the bank introduces new policies that will take effect from January 2020. Among the new policies are reduction of the withdrawal fee charged for the use of bank's automated teller machine, ATM, to 35 naira, as against the 65 naira usually deducted after a third monthly transaction. Cards linked to savings accounts, the maintenance fee had been reduced to a maximum fee of 50 naira per quarter from 50 naira per month. These policies prompted reactions from Nigerians.
I appreciate the CBN for what they have tried to do, but on my own thinking, I think they should remove all the charges.
If the central bank will, do what they have said, I personally will appreciate.
On debit card charges, the new guidelines stipulated that a one-off charge of 1,000 naira applied to the issuance of cards irrespective of type.
Operating current account and COT is being taken from me from every payment being made into my account and every deduction being made. I want to say that government should do something to wipe it out completely.
It would be good for the CBN to put up a monitoring body to work with the financial institution to keep to the policy.
Nigerians believe these policies, if implemented by financial institutions, will help the country aligned with market development.
And despite a directive by the Central Bank of Nigeria to merchants to stop the deductions of additional 50 naira on point-of-sales POS transactions, some outlets have remained defiant to the directive. Some filling stations and malls still charge the additional 50 naira. The Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission had on December 24th aligned with the Central Bank of Nigeria to stop the additional 50 naira charge imposed on transactions conducted through the POS terminals. The CBN's Managers Purchasing Index PMI for December 2019 show rapid expansion in the manufacturing sector of the economy. According to the report, the PMI stood at 60.8 index points in December 2019, indicating expansion in the manufacturing sector for the 33rd consecutive month. The report showed that all the 14 surveyed subsectors reported growth in the review month. And on that note, let's see how the Naira is faring alongside other major currencies. In the meantime, the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, Isa Ali Pantami, says the implementation of the Policy and Strategic Master Plan, which was launched by President Muhammadu Buhari in Abuja, has begun. He made this known while interacting on the roles of the ministry in 2020.
Actually, is the main theme that we want to implement, while the strategy captures some actionable plans, some actions to be done in order to make sure that the policy is implemented. If you recall vividly, on 28 November 2019, at the International Conference Center during e-Nigeria Conference on National Digital Economy, Mr. President, my boss, President Muhammad Buhari, GCFR, has launched and unveiled the National Digital Economy Policy and Strategy. And after unveiling that, he mandated the ministry to coordinate its implementation. Why we are mandated to coordinate the implementation is the fact that the implementation cannot be done by only one person or one ministry. There are other ministries and parastatals that are not necessarily under the ministry that can play a significant role towards its implementation. So our own role at the ministry's level is to ensure that we coordinate the implementation. So that is why in the course of developing the policy and the strategy, we clearly captured key federal public institutions that we need their collaboration, we need their support in order to implement the document. After unveiling the document, as you all know, no policy or strategy that is static. We try to make it very dynamic. We continue to review and update it from time to time. And we ensure that we develop the policy and strategy in a way that we will be able to actually assess our performance by coming up with key performance indicators that will always guide us whether we are on track or not, whether we are making progress or not. And that is why after this briefing with you, in the next few days, we want to ensure that the final copy of National Digital Economy Policy and Strategy will be uploaded in our website.
Oil prices skyrocket and the major stocks fall sharply after airstrikes in Iran that killed an army general. Next is a graphic representation of how the commodities are faring in the local and global markets. And that's a wrap on Friday's edition of Business Express. Be informed, all previous episodes are available on YouTube on NTA's channel. You can also communicate with us on Twitter, and handle is @NTA News Now. #BizX. Business Express returns on Monday. I am Amina Nujain.